Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. I'm your host Mark Killian, riding alongside with Phil as we talk investing, finance, and retirement, and not fumbling our retirement is the topic this week because it's the playoffs. We're into the playoffs of the
that
NFL
time of year.
season. That time of year, and I'm a little sick, as it probably sounds, and I probably look it too. Phil and I were just laughing. I've been in the bed all week with the crud. You had it last week, didn't you?
Yeah, it's that time of year. It's going around. So
like everybody,
who knows? Yeah.
You know,
cold, the flu, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we were laughing. We were saying, the comments always, do you have COVID? It's like our minds just do that now.
You go right to that. Exactly.
We still have
forgot that. There is cold and the flu and all the other things that come with winters. So.
Yeah, we still have the common cold, right? And it can still kick your butt too. So, but anyway, we're going to try to get through this. But it is the playoffs, and of course, Lions fans, we don't know what those are. Playoffs.
Yeah, that's playoffs. What's that? We haven't seen those in too many years. So.
That's right, for a long time. But it's an easy analogy for a lot of people to make, Phil. And often we try to find stuff where we can just say, look, just take something that you like or that that really resonates and apply that to financial stuff and see if it kind of unlocks the door, if you will, to kind of I got it. And so sometimes that just makes it easier for people. So it's the financial red zone. I think Prudential coined that term, if I'm not mistaken, a long time ago.
Yeah, quite a few years ago. That was the financial red zone. Yeah, exactly. That's where I think it all started. I
think it started. Yeah. Right. So we're going to kind of use that kind of thing. So in football, for a lot of the non-football people, it's basically just the last 20 yards before you score a touchdown, before the end zone. Yep. So what is the financial red zone equivalent, Phil?
It's typically that, the early years leading up to retirement and in the early years of retirement. So I would say, 5 to 10 years prior to and then after retirement, so that's when if you want to think about most at risk for things going wrong, it can affect you the most. Let's put it that way. So if bad things happen or you're not properly prepared in that time frame, it can change the whole picture.
Yeah, and so if you're keeping with the football analogy, it's tougher if you're watching the playoffs, right? The time we're putting this podcast out, it's like I said, we're right in the middle of the NFL playoffs for the current season. And so defenses tighten up. There's less room to maneuver. They have to be a lot more cautious. So from a financial, it's the same thing, right? You're tightening up because at this point, you don't want to be taking those extra risks because your timeline is right there, the end zone, so to speak, is right there in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of dangers in there, and people's reactions are almost as dangerous because there's errors made in the other direction too. At that point, if you from football try to become too aggressive, you can get yourself in trouble just as much as you can if you don't. So you've got to look at both sides of it. The game doesn't change. It's just dangers are more prevalent and how they affect.
Well, that's a good point, actually, because a lot of times if you're in the financial red zone, so let's just call it 55, right? We'll just say you're 55 plus, and maybe your advisor or whoever you're working with, or you're hearing a lot of commercials and things saying, don't have anything at risk, play it safe, get it into an annuity, or whatever that kind of thing is. They're really kind of talking about not pulling everything off the table, which to a degree makes sense, right?
Right.
But to your same point, if you're playing the game of football, you can't just, and you're winning, you can't just shut down and not try to advance the ball forward some. You've still got to move the ball a little bit because otherwise you got to run the clock out, right? You got to eat up the time of the game so that you can protect the win. Same kind of thing financially. Yep. You still got to have some stuff out there at risk, but we're talking about now mitigating some of the risk. You still got to outpace inflation, things like that.
Yeah, and that's the biggest danger is really people getting too conservative as they near retirement or even, first stages of retirement.
Right.
And it's been easy to think that, way and think, well, it's okay. Inflation's really low, historically last 10 years, 20 years. We've averaged 2.5% maybe.
Right.
Until this year happens, all of a sudden we realize, oh yeah, inflation does really exist. At some point it's going to come back.
Yeah.
So we've got a real taste of what inflation is this year how long this continues, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of things that have driven inflation higher, I think, this year than what is typical.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It happened. You still
Yep.
have to account for it. You still have to make sure that your plan is going to keep up with that inflationary piece. So yeah, you can't look at the entire portfolio as one and say, okay, I'm retired or nearing retirement, so I've got to make everything conservative now because I can't take risk. Because doing that takes risks that you don't think of, like
Right.
inflation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's the old adage, you're going broke safely. So
Right. And let's talk a little bit about the inflation and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So we've shared before, we're in two different places when we're doing the podcast. I used to live in the Detroit area. I don't anymore. And we've got a snowstorm coming. Not a big deal to Detroiters, but now that I'm a Southerner, right? I lived there in the
Yeah.
Michigan area forever, so it doesn't really bother me. But down here in the South, people panic something fierce when a
Oh yeah.
snowstorm is coming, right? So there's one coming in at the time we're taping this. Actually, going to be tomorrow. So my wife goes to the store yesterday, 2 days ahead of time. And of course, it's almost completely already gone. Like the stores are empty. But here's the thing. They've been that way, right? Because the supply chains and all these issues that are going on. So
Yes.
she's talking with the manager guy there. He says the shipments are even delayed, right? So not only do you have like these weather impacts that are going on and you got people overreacting in times like this, but with the cost of everything and the shipping delays, we're really running into some real, I mean, it's starting to get really, really real out there
Oh,
in
absolutely.
different parts of the
Yeah.
country, and people are getting really worried. And it's the same kind of thing. What are you willing to risk, right? So
Yep.
now you're wondering, well, how much food should I get? And do I keep it? Because if we lose power, then the food goes bad. I mean, it's any kind of analogy you want to make, but as the closer we're getting to retirement, the less time we have to recover
Yes.
if we take a chance and it goes bad.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point when you get to this stage is you don't have time anymore. Saving for retirement, it's relatively easy. Yeah, you might have some volatility and might not be comfortable, but
Right.
you've got time. And as long as you don't touch that money, shares values might go down, but the number of shares are there and they come back eventually. Markets go, it's ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Where you get in real danger is if during that downturn you start pulling money out because now you're having to sell more shares at a lower value because you're retired. You need
Yeah.
X amount, whatever that budget amount is per month. And unless you're willing to slash your budget, dramatically change lifestyle, you need what you need to live on.
Well,
And that's
and
the
more
concept
so.
of sequence of returns, we call it.
Yeah.
And yet exactly. Then you add inflation into that, you might
Right.
even need more.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
she was talking about some roast or something that she was like, she's like, it was $30 for this roast,
yeah.
and she's like, it wasn't that much, just, 9 months ago or 8 months ago. I mean, it's
Yep.
really gotten out of control. Are you guys seeing a lot of similar? Are the
Oh yeah,
shelves pretty thin?
Yep, shelves are thin. We're back to went to Costco the other day, and it's like, okay, where's all the toilet paper again? Are you guys kidding me?
Yeah, it's, and so
What's going on? It's just crazy.
Well, it's the supply chain issues, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
all this kind of stuff kind of stacks up. And if you want to, again, go back to the football analogy, so everything gets a little tighter and it gets a little tougher to maneuver to kind
Yep.
of, find the right play to keep, scoring. And to our point earlier, you still got to score. You still got to put up some points a little bit, which is
Yes.
keeping up with inflation. So what are some of the top mistakes that people tend to do, Phil, when it comes to not really being ready in the red zone? We kind of covered the risk a little bit. Taking too much is obviously one, right?
Yeah. I mean, taking too much or too little risk are probably the two most common. But really, at the end of the day, it comes down to having a plan and understanding what does retirement look like? How much do I need? And where's that money going to come from? Because it's one thing to understand, well, okay, I'm going to need X amount a month, 5, 10, whatever that is for you. But now that you know that, where's that money going to come from? And then having a plan with that amount of money you need hedged from this danger of either inflation and or risk in a market. Personally, how we do it, and we've talked about it several times, we bucketize money. So we understand specifically what our clients are going to need in the next 10 years. And we've got that invested in a much different fashion than we do the rest of the money, which is more long-term growth.
And so with talking about putting a strategy together, because we got this collection of stuff, right? So when you're saying we got to put a plan together, it's when to turn on what what time to pull from what accounts where, how to strategize the Social Security, all of those things. That becomes and again, you go back to the football thing, it's coaching, right?
Yes.
I mean, look, I'm not a big Brady fan, but the guy is freaking amazing. All right. So
it's hard to argue.
He's
with
on his
facts,
way to maybe an
happening.
8th Super Bowl, right? Which is just ridiculous. We don't know yet. It's still the middle of the playoffs, but he still goes to his coaches, whether it was his former coach or his current coach. He's seen everything you can possibly throw at him, but he still goes and gets feedback from his coach about tweaking stuff along the way, right? And that's the same thing that you're talking about doing. Look, we start to put this plan together, or maybe you even have a plan or you have some collection of stuff, but let's see how we can tweak it and really maximize it, because now in 2022, well, inflation is a lot different than it was over the last 3 years, and we got to change the game a little bit.
Right.
That kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah. And I mean, now is not the time to change the game.
Okay.
I mean, you're making harsh decisions at the wrong time. You're reacting.
Okay. So you just need to make little tweaks, right?
Right. Which you should have already built into your plan. What does this look like if we get into inflation?
Okay.
Have assets invested in such a way that those assets are going to keep up with inflation. It might not be specifically the money you need today, but big picture overall, yes, the plan is going to work. And then having, to your point, that coach, which is the financial advisor,
right?
Number one, put the plan together and help you walk through it, but then work with you on a regular basis. I mean, that's a big piece of what we do with helping clients is developing a plan, but then helping them along the way.
Yeah, go back to the sidelines and make little adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, you get into the times like this, and fear sets in, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, markets are down, man, we got this inflation, what is going on? It's not like it was before, and that's when you make the wrong decision. Typically, if you're reacting at that stage, as a financial advisor, we can help our clients walk through and say, yeah, we understand this is going to happen. Markets, go up and down, inflation happens. We're still okay. Here's the plan. We're on track. We have to maybe make a little adjustments here and there to tweak along the way, but we shouldn't have to dramatically change course, cut your budget or whatever the case is in times like this.
Yeah, you got to be able to massage it a little bit. So for those that, that was kind of some of the negatives, I suppose, if you wanted to think about it that way. But for those that have been paying attention, Phil, or that have been being proactive, why is retirement planning a little bit easier? We've got some bullet points. Can you share those bullet points with folks a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, having that retirement age in mind, right? I mean, you've got to have the target. Start with the end in mind, right?
I mean, even if you want to move it, right? So, you just kind of pencil it in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even if and we have that with clients all the time. We work with clients that 5 years out from retirement, and they've been planning and strategizing maybe to retire a year and a half ago. We've had a lot of clients that were, going to retire early 2000 in that time frame, but then COVID hit and their work environment changed. Yeah. Or 2020. I mean, So now all of a sudden, this isn't too bad. I'm working at home. I can still handle it. It's not like I have the commute and all the other stresses maybe you had before. Right. So we've had several clients that have pushed retirement out because it's easier. I mean, hey, why not? They're paying me to work at home. I can work through the schedule and continue to push this out a few years. It's okay. Can't travel, can't do things anyways, So
right. Kind of back to our podcast a couple of weeks ago with the Great Resignation, right? That's where some people are saying, hey, look, if you force me to go back to the office, I'm going to quit. But if I can work from home, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. So, but it started with having a plan. It all worked well. They could have retired, but they didn't need to. They didn't want to. Facts changed. So, I mean, that's the first piece. But then once you have that, now understanding all the different income streams, how are you going to make that happen? And then with, like in these cases, maybe tweaking that if they're not retired. Maybe we were planning on filing for Social Security. Well, if you're not going to retire, you don't need the income. Why? Don't file, delay it. Let it continue to grow and build until you start to need the money. So just again, understanding, here's our plan, and then making tweaks along the way.
Okay.
So,
all right.
That's another one. I mean, it really comes back to understanding the debt you carry. Is it something that keeps you up at night? Build it into the plan. If it is, then let's figure out how to get that paid off maybe sooner rather than later. Maybe it makes sense to keep it. There's a lot of factors to consider when you're looking at debt, specifically mortgage type debt.
Yeah, and it all kind of fits within that, financial red zone, right? Because we're in those kind of narrowing years, so it's like we're trying to get the debt down, we're making more, so it all kind of works together. Again, if you've been, if you're being a little just even a little proactive.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So it's a matter of having all these things on your radar,
right?
Build them into the plan, walk through the pros and cons and emotions of that discussion with an advisor, so they can help you, show you both sides of that equation. So you can start to understand, well, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And then really having a clear picture of what do I need? What do I want my lifestyle to be once I retire? And that's frankly the biggest piece, because if you just kind of fall into retirement, you don't have a specific plan and know, hey, this is, my target is X amount and this is where it's going to come from, then you're in real danger, because now you're just kind of letting things happen and you're out of control. And yeah, you're going to be subject to a lot more market risk, and maybe you're not positioned the right way to handle distributions that you were planning on taking, all the different factors that come into play.
Yeah. And if you go back to the football analogy, right? So the team, one team is winning. They're starting to get much more conservative. They're still advancing the ball because they've got to run the clock out. But the other team, who is now losing, they're getting riskier. They're taking more chances, and they're doing some things that they probably was not originally in their
part
game
of the plan. Yeah.
Right. In order to kind of get back in it. And so you don't want to be on that side. You want to be on the side that's obviously winning and trying to run the clock down so that you can, take the victory formation, take a knee, and kind of protect the win. Right. So it all kind of comes back to having a good strategy in place. You still got to outpace inflation. So you still got to be advancing the ball, but you don't need to be slinging it all over the yard. If you're in pretty good shape, like I said, I'll go back one more time, but you think about to a few years back, I think it was 2015, the Super Bowl with the Patriots and the Seahawks. Yeah. The Seahawks pulled out this miracle. They on the 1 yard line, they've got the best running back in the league. They're going to punch it in, and there's no time on the clock. They're going to punch this thing in. They're going to win the Super Bowl. And the coach decided to get crafty, decided to outfox everybody and throw a little slant pass, and it cost them. It was an interception. They lost the game, right?
Yep.
He took a big risk when he didn't need to. He could have just kind of stayed a little bit more conservative. So he deviated from his own. They got to the Super Bowl because of this running back, right? And some other things. I'm kind of just paraphrasing down, but you get the idea, folks, right? When you get to that tighter, financial red zone, when things are getting, you're getting close to retirement, you want to have some stuff out there where you're still outpacing inflation, but you do not want to be risking too much. And that's where a good strategy and a good plan comes into place, and a good coach. And that's hopefully what we talk about, right? Yep.
Understanding your timeline and having things set up the right way. So
there you go. So get yourself a coach, reach out to Phil, give him a holler, have a conversation. And we're going to go because both of us are trying not to cough. So thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate your time as always on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts. You can find this phone number and all the stuff right there on the screen. It's 248-888-7530. It's 248-888-7530. You can also find all of it at philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. And we'll see you next time here on the show.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.